Chapter 4 Our Lady, Queen of Chubacca. If the town of Hagglesworth, with its burning streets and ash heaps and high murder rate, was a grim place to grow up, no effort was made inside the walls of Our Lady, Queen of Chubacca High School to make us think otherwise. The hallways of the high school were some of the most dangerous thoroughfares in town. Grown men didn't like walking those halls. Because of the town's mining tradition, much of the school was dug underground. If you weren't careful, one wrong turn and you could get lost for days. Rumor had it that somewhere in the deep, past the teacher's lounge and further down into the sub-basement, there was a minotaur. It seems almost too mythological to believe, but this minotaur, which did in fact exist, came from the deepest recesses in the earth. Minotaurs are born of fire and anger. No man can kill one unless equipped with the arrow of Theseus. Now I'm just listing Minotaur facts to show off. You got me. Anyway, there probably was a Minotaur in the basement of my high school, but it's one of those unconfirmed facts. There were, however, some classrooms that kept a canary in a cage in the corner. The oxygen could get pretty thin on some days, and if that canary dropped, it was an unorganized scramble to see who could get out alive. Carrying my flute through the halls with my impossibly beautiful hair put a fat bullseye on my back from the beginning. I knew if I was going to make it through those 4 years, I needed to find the toughest guy in school and show him I was not one to be trifled with. On my first day, I went right up to Hans Zielinski, a big lump of a Pole, and I beat him within an inch of his life. The poor dumb lug didn't know what hit him. It was a brick. I used a brick. After that day, no one dared bother me. I was number one. No one ever officially declared that I was number one, but I knew it. I had posters made. It was pretty obvious. I can't say I was much of a student. The good sisters, bless their hearts, showed a lot of patience with me. But it just didn't take. A word about the good sisters, and all nuns for that matter. I am no Catholic. In fact, I have an irrational and unexplainable dislike for the Catholics. They're a grubby bunch of sour sacks, if you ask me. But even the Catholics I talk to hate nuns. I mean, you're always hearing about stone-faced old hags rapping kids on the knuckles for not paying attention, or stern old maids pulling children through the halls by their ears. First of all, if any nun would have tried any kind of nonsense like that in Hagglesworth, they would have gotten socked in the puss. I would have been the first in line to do the socking. I've socked old ladies before, and believe me, it's not pretty. But the nuns at Chubacca who tried to put education in me were nothing like the repressed old maids we all think of when we think of nuns. No, I don't know why. Maybe it was a papal order from the Vatican. But the nuns we got at Our Lady Queen of Chubacca were very sweet and very, very gorgeous. The whole lot of them across the board could have been Playboy centerfolds, for sure. But they gave their lives over to Jesus Christ. There were about 25 of them there in the high school, and they ranged from age 18 to 22. Jesus was their Lord and Master, and what a lucky guy he was, because these ladies were absolutely stunning. Maybe God sent the very best to Hagglesworth because it was so close to hell. Who knows? All of them were 5'7" tall and built like Raquel Welch, with legs that went on for days. Of course, we never saw the nuns out of their habits and hats, except when they taught wrestling or during swim class. But other than those 2 hours every day, they were as buttoned up as Eskimos in a snowstorm. I'm gonna admit it. When one of those nuns showered with us after wrestling practice, there were more than a few boners on display. It wasn't very respectful of us, but it was hard not to think of them as just ordinary women, even though they had given their lives over to serve only Jesus Christ. Heck, We were all just boys with very little understanding of religious conviction. Lando Calrissian, the only African American, still getting used to saying it like that, made a play for Sister Honeytits. I'm not making that name up. Why would I make that name up? But that was the only instance I knew of such fiddling about. Lando was the star shooting guard for the Chubacca stormtroopers, so he was basically immune to punishment anyway. One of the sisters, Sister Vicky Vaginalicious, real name, did leave the faith and took up with my good buddy, Wedge Antilles, but it was rare. These women respected the church too much to let carnal desire interfere with their calling. Every year, as part of a charity drive for the local hospital, the nuns would do a fun pageant for the students and the parents. The students would make animal costumes and put on a show with singing and some kind of story. Most of the time, I was a friendly raccoon or a squirrel, and I showed off my flute playing. It was really a great night for the proud parents. Then the auditorium would start to fill up with mine workers and out-of-towners, and we children would be asked to leave. The rest of the show was performed by the nuns, who would, for charitable reasons, strip off their habits for the night and, because they had sacrificed their lives to Christ, put on 6-inch heels and colorful lingerie and do up their hair and look like real Italian movie stars. Most of them could have been Italian movie stars. Not one of them was less beautiful than Sophia Loren in her prime. Imagine 25 basically naked young women in lingerie and heels, walking back and forth on stage in a wonderful show of faith and charity and religious servitude. If they weren't nuns, you would have thought they were strippers. But of course, they were nuns, and no one could see them as anything else. For my own part, it was almost enough to make me a convert if my hatred of the Catholics had not been so irrational and visceral. Between the two shows, we would sometimes get $20,000 to $40,000 for the night in donations. The principal, Monsieur Morty Grossman, would sometimes have the sisters do some act, as he called it, up in Chicago, where they would make even more money. The kids were never invited to Chicago or Memphis or Kansas City. But the Monsieur would always tell us it was a huge success when he would roll back into town in his limo. I may not look back on Hagglesworth with much fondness, but whenever I see a nun, despite my almost limitless and completely unfounded hatred for Catholics, I do remember those sweet, innocent, and, I'll say it, ridiculously sexy nuns at Our Lady, Queen of Chubacca. Here's something you might not have known about me. I was a joiner in high school. Flag Folders Club, Glee Club, Drama Society, Taxidermy Society, Friends of Jazz, Society of Mineral and Rock Collectors, Jolly Jesters, United Socialist Party, Freudian Study Group. I did just about everything. I went out for all sports and I loved them all. But basketball was to me what horses are to 12-year-old girls. Some weird transferred sexual energy that really is more physically fulfilling than actual sex. Which is to say, I just loved basketball. I did. I wasn't too good at it, though. I was a brawler more than a player. 5 fouls Burgundy is what they called me. I got put into games for one reason and one reason only. To foul and to foul hard. I wanted guys on the opposing team to look across half court and worry about whether I was coming in the game. Sometimes opposing teams did their best to eliminate me way before game time. Because if they didn't, they knew I was going to come in and start throwing elbows. A team from the Quad Cities once tried to run me over in a parking lot a week before game time. If teammate Darth Blortsky wasn't there to push me out of the way, I wouldn't be here today. Believe me, they ended up paying for their little prank on the court with some hard, completely legal fouls. I got thrown out of the game that night. I was thrown out of every game, but not before I got my 5 in. I still hold the Iowa State record for most technicals in a season. Look it up. We had a great team in 57. A big Swede named Sven Vader at center, a nimble power forward named Luke Walker, Brad Darklighter was our small forward, a lightning fast little Italian, Vinny C-3PO, ran the point, and Lando Calrissian shot the lights out as our number 2. Obi-Wan Kenobi, an exchange student from Japan, was always good for 6 points as well. We won state that year, but were later disqualified, as a lot of those guys had played semi-pro ball in Brazil. Some of them were in their 30s. Nowadays, people check that kind of stuff out, but back then we had a lot of 30 and 40-year-old men posing as high school students. It was just something you did. Quick side note. Here's something completely unrelated to this book, but I'm not writing another word till I get this off my chest. It's literally paralyzed me. I can't work. I can't sleep. I can't do anything. My neighbor, Richard Wellspar, came over here last Wednesday and borrowed my leaf blower. It's a Craftsman, so you can't go wrong there. Anyway, I'm a good guy, so I let him borrow it. I go back in the house and start writing again. I don't even think about it for 2 or 3 hours, but then I see Richard out in his driveway and yell over to him, "Did you get a chance to use that leaf blower?" To which he says, "No." If that's not weird enough, it gets weirder. Then he proceeds to talk about his new clients instead of keeping the leaf blower conversation going. He's some kind of high-end pool salesman, and he's always talking about his customers as clients. Okay, so I go back in the house, but I'm kinda miffed. I'm thinking, when is he going to use the frickin' leaf blower so I can get it back? Sure enough, the whole day goes by, and I don't hear the leaf blower. Then, the next day, same thing. Well, now I can't work. I'm just sitting in my living room in silence, waiting to hear the leaf blower. The anticipation is unbearable. Why did he ask to borrow it if he's not going to use it? Several days go by, and now here we are. He hasn't even used it. He borrowed it and never used it. It's not about the stupid leaf blower. I could go buy 10 of them tomorrow. I'm doing very well, thank you. I'm the kind of guy who will walk into a Sears and buy 3 suits, a vacuum cleaner, and 4 new tires and think nothing of it. It's about integrity, being a good neighbor, the social contract. Anyway, I simply had to get that off my chest, and now back to writing. Not another thought about it.